In this video, we're going to take a look at some different types of sampling methods. First of all, let's talk about different types of sampling methods that could be used. We could use a self-selected sample, and a self-selected sample is simply asking for volunteers. So whoever wants to, they volunteer and they will be used in our sample. A systematic sample is using a rule to select. So if we were to have like every 10th person that came into a store or something like that, using a rule to select the sample from that rule or from that population. A stratified sample, we break the population into smaller groups first, and then from each of those smaller groups, we pick a random sample or a random person or people or members of that smaller group. So smaller groups first and then random from each. And a cluster sample is kind of sort of like that. It has the groups. Let me finish writing this first. So stratified, we have smaller groups and we go random from each group. A cluster sample is also smaller groups, but we take the entire group of a few of them, one or more. So smaller groups, and then we take everyone or every member that's within one or more. So all from one or more. And then finally we have a convenience sample, which is simply just easy. It's the people that we happen to run into on a given day, or something where we don't have to work too hard. People are kind of showing up for us, or they're close by where we are. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples here, but before we do that, I want to talk about the big idea in terms of samples first of all. The key with samples and the most important thing that we have to remember is randomness. Okay? Because if a sample is not random, then it doesn't tell us very much. We can't take the information that we learned from that sample and apply it to any larger population because it doesn't represent that larger population. It's just a smaller group. For example, if we had a bunch of football players and we asked them what their favorite, that's not a very good example. How about if we were asking a group of students in a school and we just asked all the seniors about something? Well, what about all the other grade levels? Might they have some different ideas about things? Potentially. So we can't take a small group that doesn't represent the population and then apply some thoughts or some data, some conclusions to that larger population. Randomness is key. And to be a random sample, it has to have the chance of every member of the population has to have the same chance of being chosen. And from there we can use that to use a sample then to make some predictions about a population or some conclusions. So we've got some examples here, and let's just take a look at these and see if we can't figure out the type of sampling method that is being applied in these situations. So first one, all members of the population are listed alphabetically. Every 9th person is chosen. Okay, so sounds to me like there's a rule that we're using which is going to make this a systematic sample. We just say, all right, every fourth person or every other person or whatever, it's very just boom, 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 every certain person, systematic. A link is posted on a social media website. Responses received are used. Well, who's going to fill out uh, this survey or whatever it is that has the link? Well, the people that want to, right? You're not going to make certain people do it. You're not dividing into any groups. It's just going to be volunteers. So that's self-selected. You might also argue that it's a convenience sample because it would be just whoever will take the time by simply posting a link and then taking those results. Now, we'll come back to that in a little bit because self-selected surveys with volunteers can be kind of troublesome. All the people you see biking in a park are asked a question. Well, we're not asking for volunteers. It's not really a rule. There are people biking. We're not breaking it down into smaller groups. I guess it depends on the population we're working with. But I think you could argue that this is a convenient sample because it's just all the people that happen to be riding bike by. Maybe you're camping out on a bench in the park and you're just asking the people who bike past. So a convenient sample. The last one here, a sports league wants to know about player training. 3 members from each team in the league are chosen. Okay, so we have teams in a league. So we have those smaller groups. So it means it must be either a stratified or a cluster sample because we've got that smaller group going on, each of the teams. Well, what do we have? This one, we're going to take an entire group, or so that would be like if we took 2 teams, every person from 2 teams in the league. The stratified would be we take one or more randomly from each of the smaller groups. Well, I think that's what we've got going here. So this is an example of a stratified sample. Now, when we talk about sampling, the most important thing, of course, there's many things that come into play, like our budget perhaps and our time constraints. Our best case scenario is to have our sample represent the population that we're trying to draw some conclusions about. And so we want to be random. One thing I said we'd come back to the self-selected sample, the volunteers. We know, using some more advanced math than what we have here, that if you choose to take volunteers, like post a link online and let people respond and don't have like a limit, that you get the extremes. You get the people that are really frustrated, that feel really strongly about something on either end. And so we want to be really careful about that and make sure that self-selected, probably not the best option. Depends on what you're trying to figure out though. Sampling methods, we've got the different types. Remember, the key is that we like randomness because that makes our data and our sample much more applicable and usable. I hope this was helpful. Keep working hard on your math. You can do it.